Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have another great show for you today. It is Tuesday, and first on the docket, the DNA in that glove in the Nancy Guthrie case, who does it belong to? I'll tell you. We've got an 11-year-old boy fatally shoots the mother's boyfriend during a domestic assault. The court hears claims of some AI questions that were asked about covering up a crime scene. The people in New Mexico are finally getting around to go take a look at Epstein's ranch. Chris Watts' pen pal discloses details of conversations on the affair that he was having and the family murders. We've got This Day in Legal History, our legal quote of the day, and our dumb criminal. Does probably one of the grossest things you could ever imagine, and I mean it, and I'll explain why. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. It is March 10th, 2026, and you know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below, hit that little bell for notifications, and yes, you can check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Before we get to the docket, let me remind you to go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that background subscription service. Listen, when everybody does it, I'll stop talking about it, all right? But when you sign up, you can do as many searches as you want. You're going to get all types of information, social media presence, email addresses, phone numbers. You're going to find out whether somebody is married, divorced, liens, judgments, bankruptcies. Do they own property? Do they have a criminal record? And yes, are they on one of those sex offender registries? Go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up today. You're going to be happy that you did. All right, let's go ahead and get to today's docket. First, that glove, the big lead that they had in the Nancy Guthrie case, well, turns out to be a nothing burger. Investigators that are investigating the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie have ruled out a widely publicized glove recovered during searches as having any connection to the case whatsoever. Zip, zilch, nada. Hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. A glove in the desert? Come on. I mean, I know everybody was trying to really get this story going, but this was not it. Anyway, the Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nano, stated the DNA analysis identified the glove's owner as a restaurant employee who works near the location where the item was discovered, approximately 2 miles from Miss Guthrie's residence in the Catalina foothills areas north of Tucson. Now, following an interview with the individual, investigators determined that the person has nothing to do with the case. How many people have they thought have been initially may have something to do with the case and had nothing? I get it. That's part of the police work, right? But here we are, week 5, going into 6, and still zilch, zip, nada, nothing. Anyway, the glove had generated significant media attention after its recovery in mid-February. It bore a visual resemblance to the glove worn by the unidentified masked individual captured on the doorbell camera footage at Miss Guthrie's home on the night that she was last seen. But laboratory testing initially revealed DNA on the glove that produced no matches in the FBI's National Crime Database. Then, subsequently, they pursued genetic genealogy in an effort to identify a potential source. That process led to the restaurant employee whose DNA matched the sample. The sheriff noted that the glove was one of approximately 16 collected during the extensive search of the areas extending up to 2 miles from the residence. Now, the FBI has indicated that many of the gloves recovered appear to have been discarded along roadside by volunteers and search personnel working in the vicinity. I guess they didn't put that in the brief for the volunteers. Don't throw your garbage in a potential area that they suspect could have items of evidentiary value. Anyway, this development represents the latest in the now 6-week adventure as it relates to Miss Guthrie, who was last seen on the evening of January 31st of 2026, following dinner at the home of her daughter, Annie Guthrie. Now, family members reported that she was obviously dropped off at her residence shortly thereafter. She was reported missing the next day after failing to participate in a scheduled church service that was going to be held online. Investigators believe that Miss Guthrie was taken against her will. Drops of blood were found on the front porch of her home, and Data from her Bluetooth-enabled pacemaker indicated that the device disconnected from her cell phone at around 2:30 a.m. on February 1st. No suspects have been named, and authorities continue to express hope that she remains alive. At least 2 purported ransom notes were sent to media outlets demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin payments, though the specified deadlines for those demands have since passed without any resolution. In response, Miss Guthrie's family has offered a $1 million reward for information leading to her safe return, supplementing the $100,000 reward posted by the FBI. Now, additional lines of inquiry remain active. A neighbor, a person by the name of Aldine Meister, reported observing a suspicious man in the area on January 11th, 3 weeks before the disappearance. The individual was described as walking slowly in street clothes rather than athletic attire, wearing a baseball cap pulled low and appearing to survey the street. The FBI has requested doorbell camera footage from the neighbors specifically from that date. Now, like I said, law enforcement continues to analyze other DNA evidence recovered during the investigation, with some samples undergoing further testing at a private lab in Florida. The Sheriff's Department has emphasized that the case remains a high priority, with resources from local police and the FBI focused on all credible leads. The family has publicly pled for information and maintains a very visible presence at the residence in recent days, including placing flowers and tributes near the property. Miss Guthrie's daughter, Savannah, has temporarily stepped away from her on-air duties to support the search efforts, but has indicated plans to return to the Today Show in the near future. Now, as the investigation proceeds, officials have urged anyone with relevant information to contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI. Obviously, no further details on these potential persons of interest have been released to the public. Next, an 11-year-old boy says, "Don't hurt mom." Well, basically. So Philadelphia police are investigating a tragic shooting in which an 11-year-old boy is accused of killing his mother's boyfriend while the man allegedly assaulted the woman inside their home. Officers reported to a residence on Peach Street shortly after midnight on Friday, March 6th, following reports of gunfire. Upon arrival, they discovered a 30-year-old Jameer Jones Walker of Lansdowne suffering from a single gunshot wound to the face in the second-floor bedroom. Needless to say, emergency personnel were called, and when they arrived, well, they found him and pronounced him dead. According to the preliminary investigation, Jones Walker had arrived at the home he shared with his girlfriend and her children. Police state that an argument over a child visitation escalated when Mr. Jones Walker began physically assaulting the woman. At that point, her 11-year-old son retrieved a firearm and shot the victim. Neighbors reported hearing a Tesla arrive and double parked outside the residence moments before the officers reached the scene. One resident, who asked not to be identified, but only wanted to be identified as Dell, described the rapid police response and expressed support for the boy's actions in protecting his mother. Both the boy and his mother have been cooperating fully with the detectives. No arrests have been announced, and the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office is reviewing the case to determine whether any charges will be filed against the juvenile or the woman. Family members were observed leaving the property later that morning, and investigators continue to interview witnesses. And police have not discussed any additional details about the firearm or the precise sequence of events. Remains under investigation, and we'll be following this one as well. I guess, I'm going to go with the fact that the general proposition is never, ever, ever hit a girl, a woman. And I'm going to go with the 11-year-old. I think prosecutorial discretion, this should not be prosecuted. However, there's going to be some people out there that are going to say, why would these 11-year-old able to get to the gun, particularly in Philadelphia? Isn't that like a no-gun zone? So it should be the safest place on earth. Unless, of course, you're getting, you're beating up your girlfriend in front of her children. And the 11-year-old says, not today, punk. I'm on board for the 11-year-old. Don't prosecute mom either. Who knows? The guy could have, beat her. You never, ever hit a girl. And frankly, I know it's not in the law and it's not legal advice, but you hit a girl, you probably need to go to jail or have the unfortunate fate of her 11-year-old son shooting you in the face. Next, a former first-round draft pick faces the death penalty as court hears claims of his AI searches to cover up the crime scene. So a preliminary hearing for former NFL linebacker Darren Lee has exposed an extraordinary allegation. Prosecutors claim the 31-year-old consulted the artificial intelligence program ChatGPT for advice on handling an unresponsive person and on injuries consistent with a shower fall moments after the alleged murder of his girlfriend, Gabriela Caravejo. I think clearly what one should probably realize here, don't use ChatGPT, use Grok. Anyway, Mr. Lee appeared in a Hamilton County court on Monday to face charges of first-degree murder and tampering with evidence in the death of the 29-year-old victim. Now, police have not excluded the possibility of seeking the death penalty if he is convicted. Unlikely. Anyway, the former Ohio State national champion is also named in a $50 million wrongful death civil lawsuit filed on behalf of the victim's family. According to the testimony presented by the prosecution, messages sent from Lee's mobile phone to ChatGPT include specific inquiries about managing an unresponsive individual and how wounds that could plausibly result from slipping in a shower. Body camera footage captured Mr. Lee telling responding officers that his girlfriend may have slipped and fallen in the shower, while stating he didn't know what had happened or what occurred. The victim was discovered inside the residence near a school outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, on the 10th of February of this year. Now, the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, Detective Brian Lockhart, described the scene as one of complete disarray, with blood present in just about every room, including a staircase, handrail, walls, floors, and even inside a vehicle in the garage. Now, the victim was found lying on her back in the living room, topless, and exhibiting multiple severe injuries. Because that's what happens, right? You slip in the shower, you obviously become dazed and confused, stumble around the house, dripping blood everywhere, and fall dead in the living room. Anyway, the injuries included black eyes, probably from tumbling down the stairs from the slip and fall where she hit her head in the shower, bite marks on her shoulder and thigh, stab wounds to her legs, extensive bruising, and a broken neck and severe brain trauma. The official cause of death was ruled blunt force trauma. Investigators also recovered a shattered microwave, scattered glassware, and alcohol bottles throughout the home, along with bleach wipes and a spray bottle upstairs. Needless to say, prosecutors suggest this all indicates attempted cleanup. Lee himself placed the 911 call from the residence as well. Now, Lee's professional football career began with some distinction. He helped Ohio State win the 2014 national championship and was selected 20th overall by the New York Jets in the NFL draft in 2016. You know, I didn't even know Ohio State had a football team. I know Michigan has a team, but I didn't even know Ohio State even had a team. Maybe people from Ohio can let me know if they do. You guys, does Ohio State even have a football team? I hear their marching band's pretty good, but I'm not sure about football. Anyway, in 3 seasons with the New York, he recorded 241 tackles, 17 for a loss and 4 sacks. A trade sent him to Kansas City Chiefs, where he appeared in all 16 games in the 29 season. Brief stints with Buffalo, Las Vegas, and then ultimately released in 2021. This is not Lee's first legal difficulty. In 2023, he was arrested in Ohio on charges of assault and domestic violence after an incident involving another woman. Records there indicate that he pushed the victim against the wall, threw her to the floor, and struck her face and head multiple times. He ultimately entered a guilty plea under a negotiated agreement. The preliminary hearing continues, with prosecutors expected to present further digital and forensic evidence linking Lee to the alleged crime. Obviously, no trial date has been set. Mr. Lee was lucky that his girlfriend didn't have an 11-year-old son there at the house. Could have gotten ugly. Next, the authorities down in New Mexico are finally getting around to the Epstein's former ranch. So state investigators in New Mexico began searching a secluded ranch once owned by financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein on Monday amid allegations that the property may have been used for sexual abuse and trafficking of young women. It's nice to know that somebody in New Mexico finally got word. I guess the teletype finally came through. Anyway, the Office of the Attorney General, Raul Torres, announced the search, which is proceeding with the full cooperation of the current owner. Torres reopened the state investigation into the ranch last month, and police noted that the revelations contained in the previously sealed FBI files now justify re-examining the evidence. And anyway, New Mexico had closed its original inquiry back in 2019 at the request of the federal prosecutors in New York. Now, Epstein purchased the expansive Zorro Ranch in Stanley, situated approximately 30 miles south of Santa Fe, in 1993 from the former Democratic Governor Bruce King. He later constructed a hilltop mansion on the grounds, complete with a private runway. The estate was sold by Epstein's estate in 2023, with the proceeds directed to creditors and the now owned by the family of Don Huffines, a Texas Republican who won his party's primary for state comptroller last week. Now, the New Mexico Department of Justice appreciates the cooperation of the current property owner, the agency stated, and prosecutors pledged to continue to keep the public informed, supporting the survivors and follow the facts wherever they may lead. Separately, state legislators have established a new commission to examine past activities at the ranch. Now, obviously, Epstein died by suicide in a Manhattan City jail in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal charges that he sexually abused and trafficked dozens of underage girls. He was never charged in New Mexico, although the state's Attorney General's office confirmed at the time that it had interviewed possible victims who had visited the property. But nothing came of it. Isn't that unique? Funny almost the way it is. And, you know, it's so, I don't know, bureaucratic, isn't it? The legislature said we're going to establish a commission to look into what happened at the ranch. Wow. And then the Attorney General is going to go search the ranch, even though it's been sold to a new owner years after Epstein's died. And it's a whole lot of to do about nothing, ladies and gentlemen. It's just a big old fraud. People are trying to get their 15 minutes of fame for their political purposes. Where were they when all that stuff was going on? Saying, well, you know, Mr. Epstein is such a good, connected person. We're going to give him a free pass on this one. Next on the docket, Chris Watts' pen pal reveals new conversations with him. Cheryl Lynn Cadle. If you may recall, we did an interview with her years and years and years ago. It was one of the more interesting interviews because she would never show her complete face. At least now she's taking full photos on the internet. But anyway, she's 72 years old, and she is considered a true crime author and a grandmother, and has described the nature of her multi-year correspondence with Chris Watts, providing further insight into discussions that provided recent reports of his attempts to form a relationship with women while he was incarcerated. So for those of you who don't recall, Chris Watts is serving 5 consecutive life sentences plus 48 years in the Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin after pleading guilty here in the state of Colorado back in 2018 for the murders of his pregnant wife, Shanann Watts, and their daughters, Bella, who was age 4, and Celeste, age 3, up in Frederick, Colorado, which is about a 10-minute drive here from the Crime Talk studios. Needless to say, the case drew national attention when Watts initially reported his family had been missing before confessing to all the killings. Anyway, Cadle initiated contact with Watts back in February 2019 through letters and subsequently engaged in more than 100 telephone calls, exchanged extensive written correspondence, and visited him in prison. She has authored books drawn from these materials. Now, in statements provided to media outlets, Cadle characterized the early phase of their communications as resembling a maternal relationship. She noted that Watts began sharing explicit accounts of his extramarital affair with the then co-worker Nicole Kessinger, which was ongoing at the time of the murders. Now, according to Cadle, Watts described frequent sexual activities with Kessinger occurring 3 to 4 times a day, along with extended phone conversations of an intimate nature and the exchange of explicit photographs. Cadle stated that Watts viewed her as a confidant and disclosed elements of the relationship that she considered unusually personal. Well, Cadle expressed the view that Watts' preoccupations with Kessinger played a central role in the crimes. In one letter quoted by Cadle, Watts wrote, quote, "If I had not met Nikki, I would never have killed my family," end quote. He further described an absence of remorse immediately following the killing, stating that feelings of love for Kessinger had overtaken him and that an internal darkness had prevailed. Kayla reported that Watts provided repeated accounts of the murders during the conversation, and he described strangling Shanann in their home, which also resulted in the death of their unborn son Nico, and then transporting the girls to an oil facility where he worked. Now, according to Cato's recollection, Watts detailed placing Celeste into an oil tank and expressing surprise at Bella's resistance, recounting the children's plea of "Daddy, no." Cato observed that Watts did not express grief for the victims, but rather focused on the loss of his public image as a devoted husband and father. Narcissist. Anyway, she noted instances in which Watts attributed responsibility to others, including Kessinger and Shanann, and in April of 2019 letter suggested that the undiagnosed Asperger's syndrome might explain aspects of his behavior. Cato indicated that the intensity of the exchange affected her personally, leading to nightmares and a decision to end communications in 2023. She cited Watts' persistence, self-focus, and reluctance to accept full accountability as primary factors in her withdrawal from the communication chat, pen pal, I guess you could say. Anyway, Chris Watts' mother, Cindy, reportedly expressed opposition to corresponding with Cato. The disclosures follow earlier reporting on Watts' continued pursuit of romantic interests from prison, and Cato stated that such behavior aligned with patterns she observed, attributing to the need for external validation. So Cato emphasized that she approached the correspondence with an intent to understand the circumstances of the crime without now, putting on judgment on him, but ultimately concluded that boundaries were necessary given the content shared. Chris Watts is a murderer. He killed his wife, Shanann, unborn son, Nico, and his two little girls. Cute as a bug, his little girls. We have videos where we showed you the size of he had to push their bodies in there. They didn't go voluntarily. They didn't go easily, ladies and gentlemen. And I can say this because he's convicted and will never get out. And it's all true based upon his guilty pleas. He is a horrible human being for killing his wife and two children and his unborn son. Horrible human being. I'm sure there's somebody out there that says, oh, no. He's completely innocent. He's all just a big, been framed. Yeah. Bring your tin hat and come talk to me about the Brian Kohberger case as well. Right? All right. Next, this day in legal history, March 10th, 1848, ratification of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo by the United States Senate. What was that about? Well, it was a decisive vote. The Senate ratified the treaty signed earlier that year in Mexico, formally ending the Mexican-American War. The agreement resulted in Mexico ceding approximately 525,000 square miles of territory to the United States, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming, in exchange for $15 million. So sometimes somebody says you're on stolen land. No, you're not. We bought it fair and square from Mexico. We got the treaty to prove it. Anyway, it ranks among one of the most consequential territorial expansions in American history, reshaping the nation's borders, influencing westward expansion, and raising, obviously, legal questions regarding titles to the land, citizenship, and Indian rights. Next, March 10th, 1863, the Supreme Court's decisions in the Prize case, Prize cases, 67 U.S. 635. In a 5-4 ruling, the court upheld President Abraham Lincoln's authority to, wait for it, to impose a naval blockade on Confederate ports at the outset of the Civil War without a formal congressional declaration of war. The decision affirmed that the president possesses broad executive powers to respond to insurrection or rebellion as a de facto state of war. It stands as a landmark precedent on presidential war powers and executive authority during national emergencies, with lasting implications for constitutional separations of power. See, ladies and gentlemen, we always act like it's all brand new. This has never been decided before. 1861, for goodness sakes. Same issues that we have today. No, Congress is the only one that declared war. Nope. Supreme Court says president can do what he needs to do to protect the United States. Even way back when. They've been arguing about the same thing because everybody wants to be in charge, but nobody wants any of the responsibility. Have you noticed how that debate went away? Must have war powers. It fails. Pff, nobody said another thing. And when was the last time Congress declared war? World War II, ladies and gentlemen. Think about all the military incidents, police actions that we've had. And to say now Congress wants to declare war. Congress can't even pass a budget. Could you imagine them trying to actually declare war on somebody? Ridiculous. March 10th, 1919, United States Supreme Court decision in Debs versus the United States. In a unanimous opinion written by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, the court upheld the conviction of prominent socialist and labor leader Eugene V. Debs under the Espionage Act of 1917 for a speech opposing U.S. involvement in World War I. Now, the ruling applied and extended to the clear and present danger test introduced days earlier in the Shrek case, holding that certain anti-war advocacy could be restricted during wartime. Now, though later criticized and partially limited by subsequent cases, it remains a foundational, if not controversial, decision on First Amendment jurisprudence regarding free speech in the times of conflict. And so, hey, why not have a quote of the day regarding war? And this quote is delivered during the judgment of the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg in 1946. Quote, war is essentially an evil thing. Its consequences are not confined to the belligerent states alone, but affect the whole world. To initiate a war of aggression, therefore, is not only an international crime, it is the supreme international crime, differing only from other war crimes in that it contains within itself the accumulation of evil on the whole. End quote. And finally, our dumb criminal of the day. This is probably one of the grossest things I've ever heard of, ladies and gentlemen, and I will tell you why when we get through it. So a man who is already in jail was arrested after escaping from custody. Please meet Harry Sanchez. He resides there in Vero Beach, Florida, and he was arrested the other day and charged with prisoner escape or attempted escape. Now, Sanchez, who is currently in jail on resisting arrest charges, drug and theft charges as well, and he was apparently helping out during the Indian River County Sheriff's Office barbecue that they had on March 4th. He was assigned to serve the line for barbecue when he allegedly snuck away from the service line to meet an unknown woman for a romantic rendezvous. Wait till you find out where it is. Sanchez then met the woman, that's right, engaged in intercourse with the woman in, wait for it, a portable toilet. Just the thought of it, right? Even if you got a slight gag reflex, grossest thing ever. Portable toilets are the most disgusting thing ever created. Okay? When we were in the military, we would go out in the field. They would have porta potties, portable toilets. No. I will go off into the woods with my little shovel and take care of business rather than going into a portable, right? It's one of those places you got to breathe through your mouth. If you can even make it through it. They are the most disgusting things ever created. Okay? We can send a man to the moon. We ought to be able to come up with a better idea for a portable toilet than pouring a bunch of blue juice into a hole and letting it sit there. Anyway, the sheriff's office noted that the incident was captured on some cameras. And during an interview, deputies said reported that Sanchez said that he didn't, in fact, have sex with the woman in the portable toilet after he left. And video footage also revealed that Sanchez walked away from the food service line and then walked to the portable toilets. Anyway, two unknown women were then seen talking to Sanchez. One of the women is seen going into the portable toilet, and moments later, Sanchez checks his surrounding and is seen entering the portable toilets. When told of the timeline of events on the video, Sanchez admitted that it was true, but declined to identify the woman. An examination of the video revealed the woman was a former inmate of the jail herself. Anyway, Mr. Sanchez is back in custody on a $25,000 bond. Okay, I think his punishment should have to be to like clean out toilets if he is convicted. Oh my God, Mr. Sanchez. I don't know who is, I wouldn't say dumber, more disgusting, you or the unidentified female that wanted to have sex in a portable toilet in Florida. Can you imagine the heat, the bugs? Grossest thing I've ever heard of. Mr. Sanchez, you need to do some self-reflection, buddy. Get over your urges and impulses. I don't care. A portable toilet? Ugh. You are a dumb criminal of the day. That's all I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Remember, the Constitution matters.